Welcome, future chartered accountants. Today, we're going to tackle a really crucial topic for your exams, something that tells the real story of how a business works. We're talking about activity ratios.
So, at the end of the day, what's the big question we're trying to answer here? It's this: how fast can a business turn everything it owns, its assets, into actual sales? It's all about efficiency, speed, and just how well the company is performing. Now, to make this all super simple and, a bit more fun, let's use an example we all know and love. Let's imagine our friend Beam has opened his very own famous ladoo shop. And guess what? We're his new financial advisors, here to help him make it a huge success. Okay, so first things first. Before we start advising Beam, let's make sure our own foundation is rock solid. We're going to dive straight into the official definition, right from your ICAI material. This is the stuff the examiners are really looking for. So, as your study material puts it, these ratios are used to evaluate the efficiency with which a firm manages and utilizes its assets. Okay, that sounds a bit textbooky, doesn't it? Let's translate that for our client, Beam. All we're really asking is, hey Beam, how well are you using your shop, your money, and all your ingredients to sell as many ladoos as you possibly can? Simple as that. All right, let's start by looking at the big picture, the 30,000-foot view of the whole operation. How efficiently is Beam's entire business using all of its resources to make money? And for that, we start with the big one, the total asset turnover ratio. Seriously, think of this as the main scorecard for Beam's entire ladoo empire. It tells us how much sales revenue he's making for every single rupee he's invested in his assets, everything from the delivery van to the cash register. And here's how we figure out that score. The formula is actually pretty straightforward. It's just sales, or sometimes you'll see cost of goods sold, divided by the total assets. We're putting his total sales head-to-head with the total value of everything he owns. So for Beam's shop, what does a high number here actually mean? Well, it's great news. It means he's squeezing a lot of sales out of his shop and his equipment. His assets are working really hard for him. A low ratio, though, that might tell us that some of his assets are kind of just sitting around, not really making him any money. Okay, now let's zoom in a bit from that big picture. Let's talk about the fixed assets turnover ratio. This one focuses specifically on the long-term workhorses of the business. Things like Beam's big ovens, his shiny new delivery van, and the shop building itself. And this ratio is brilliant because it tells us if that expensive new ladoo making machine Beam bought is actually earning its keep. Is it churning out ladoos day and night, or is it just a very expensive decoration? This number gives us the answer. All right, so we've talked about the big fixed stuff. Now let's shift gears and look at the money that's flowing through the business every single day. We're talking about working capital. This is the financial lifeblood that keeps Beam's ladoo shop humming along. The working capital turnover ratio shows us exactly how hard that daily cash is working. It's basically asking, for every rupee of working capital Beam uses to buy fresh ingredients or pay his staff, how many rupees in sales does he get back? For Beam, this is all about how well he's managing his day-to-day cash flow. Buying ingredients, collecting money from customers, and keeping those delicious ladoos coming. A nice, high ratio means every rupee is a super efficient, sales-generating machine. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. We can actually break down working capital into its key parts. This is where we put on our financial detective hats and figure out what's really happening inside the business. So think of it like this. We're just looking at three things. How fast do the ladoos sell? How quickly do we get paid for them? And how fast do we pay for our ingredients? It's the whole operating cycle in just three ratios. First up, inventory turnover. This one's all about the relationship between the cost of the ladoos sold and the average amount of ladoos Beam keeps in stock. It basically answers the question, how many times in a year does Beam completely sell out and restock his entire inventory? And a high ratio here is exactly what we want to see. It means Beam's ladoos are fresh, they're flying off the shelves, and they're not getting old and stale in the back room. For a food business, this is absolutely critical. High turnover means fresh products and very happy customers. Okay, next is receivables, or as you know them, debtors turnover. This is all about how good Beam is at collecting money from customers who don't pay right away. Like for a big wedding order where he sends an invoice later. This ratio tracks how quickly he turns that piece of paper into actual cash in the bank.
But here's the really practical part. We can use this ratio to calculate something called the average collection period. This tells us the exact number of days, on average, it takes Beam to get paid after he sells on credit. And let me tell you, for any business, a shorter collection period is always better. Cash in hand is king.
And finally, we have payables turnover. This looks at the other side of the coin. It's not about getting paid, it's about paying our own bills. This ratio shows how quickly Beam is paying his suppliers for all that flour, sugar, and ghee.
And just like before, we can figure out the average payment period, how many days Beam takes to pay his suppliers. Now, here's the interesting part. A longer period isn't always bad. It can mean he's cleverly using his suppliers' credit to manage his own cash flow. But it's a very delicate balance. You don't want to make your suppliers angry.
So, we've gone through a whole bunch of ratios. Why does all this matter? Let's boil it all down to the key takeaways for your exams and for your future career. This is the part you really want to lock in.
Let's wrap this up. If you remember one thing, it's this. Activity ratios are all about efficiency. They tell the story of how fast a business, like Beam's shop, can turn what it owns into actual sales. And by breaking down that operating cycle, inventory, receivables, payables, they let you peek behind the curtain and diagnose the true health of a company's operations.
So, I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. Think about a company like Zomato or Swiggy. Which turnover ratio do you think matters the most for them? Think about how their business actually works. Do they own a lot of fixed assets? Do they hold tons of inventory? Or is their success all about the speed of their operations? Answering questions like this, well, that's exactly what you'll be doing as a chartered accountant. Keep thinking, keep analyzing.